strange thing about the Dogon tradition is that it dates back to before the era of astronomical instruments. The knowledge existed for many centuries before Sirius B was even known.
To the Dogon people of Mali, the night sky is a map, not just a background. They use that map to time big ceremonies, plan their farming, and anchor their stories to real stars. When outsiders finally wrote that map down, most people shrugged and called it a myth.
There is no logical explanation for why the Dogon tribe knew about the Sirius star system naturally.
Decades later, an AI model stitched every note and diagram together and checked it against everything NASA and modern astronomy know about the sky. Some details were shockingly accurate, others were way off. That mix is where the real mystery starts. Inside Dogon country, the world behind the star map. If you travel to central Mali and West Africa and turn off the main road, the land slowly rises until you reach a long wall of rock called the Bandiagara Cliffs. It stretches across the landscape for about 90 miles and lifts roughly 1,600 feet above the plains below. Villages sit at the base, cling to narrow ledges halfway up, and spread out on the plateau above. You see clusters of mud homes, pointed grain stores, and tiny openings high in the rock face that seem far too high for anyone to reach. This is Dogon country, a place that stayed quiet and hidden from the outside world for a very long time, until travelers began to notice something unusual in the stories told here, something that would later be linked to what people called a secret star map. The Dogon did not begin their story at these cliffs. Their ancestors moved toward this region many centuries ago, most likely around the 14th century. They came from areas to the west and southwest and were pushed by pressure from stronger kingdoms, raids meant to capture people, and groups trying to force them to change their beliefs. To them, the cliffs were not just a tall stretch of stone, they were a natural fortress. Villages built along this high rock wall could see trouble coming from a long distance. Hidden paths and sharp ledges made fast attacks almost impossible. When the Dogon reached this place, they found they were not the first to settle here. High up on the cliff face are some of the oldest signs of life in the region. Small mud structures and burial caves belong to earlier peoples known today as the Toloi. Archaeologists later found old granaries, pottery, and human remains from these cultures deep inside small rock openings carved centuries before the Dogon arrived. Some of these remains are more than 2,000 years old. From about the 11th to the 16th century, the Telem carved mud brick burial spaces high on the cliff walls to protect their dead from sudden flash floods. When the Dogon later built their homes lower down, these earlier tombs remained far above them, fixed in the cliff like silent memories. A Dogon village is tight and organized. The houses are made of earth, straw, and wood, and they stand close together around shared courtyards where families gather. Granaries fill the spaces between homes, sometimes appearing even more numerous than the houses themselves. Male granaries, which hold millet, sorghum, and other grains, stand on raised stone bases and have small wooden doors and tall roofs made from millet straw. Female granaries look almost the same from the outside, but they are used to store clothes, jewelry, and personal belongings. These raised storehouses keep what is inside dry and safe from rats, bugs, and thieves. When the granary roofs are full and rounded, it signals that the family or the village has had a successful year. The doors of these granaries are carved with human figures, masks, animals, or small repeating symbols. These carvings are believed to protect what is stored inside, and to remind people of their ancestors and the spirits they honor. Religion touches nearly every part of Dogon daily life. At the heart of their belief is a creator named Amma, the one who made the world. Older accounts from Dogon elders describe Amma shaping something like a world egg that held the seeds of everything that would later exist. From this moment of creation came the earth, living beings, and the rules that guide life. Alongside Amma are beings tied to water, order, and balance, often called the Nomo. Many versions of the story describe them as spirit beings living in water who brought language, social rules, and balance to the world. Every village has a key figure responsible for guiding the community at a spiritual and moral level. This leader is called the Hogan. The Hogan is always an elder chosen for wisdom and calm judgment. Once chosen, the Hogan follows strict rules. He usually lives alone in a special house and must avoid physical contact with others, even with his own family. He wears clean white clothing and is treated with great respect. In some traditions, a sacred snake linked to an ancestor named Liba is said to visit the Hogan at night to clean and protect him. The Hogan leads major rituals, oversees sacrifices at shrines, and is expected to protect both the people and their link to those who came before them. Dogon religious life is not limited to elders and quiet rituals. It also includes large gatherings, masks, and dances that bring entire villages together. One of the most visible groups in this world is the Men's Mask Society, known as the Awa. Members of the Awa carve and wear many kinds of masks, including the well-known Kanaga mask, with its tall double-cross form. During funerals and end-of-mourning ceremonies called Dhamma, long lines of masked dancers move through the villages, leaping, spinning, and striking the ground with their steps. These dances help guide the souls of the dead toward the realm of the ancestors and help keep the balance between the world of the living and the world beyond. Some ceremonies are far rarer and follow a cycle that spans generations. The most important of these is the Sigu. It takes place only once every 60 years and can last for several years as it moves from village to village along the cliff. The Sigu marks the moment when the first ancestor died and when humans first received spoken language. During the Sigu, men carve new masks, including an enormous mask called the Great Mask. It is far too long to be worn on the face and must be carried by hand. A special group of men, sometimes called the Sigu Society, prepares for this event over many months. They may even live apart from the village in hidden shelters as they get ready for the long, complex rites. The Sigu also involves a secret speech known as Sigiso, the language of Sigu. Only initiated men are allowed to learn it. Sigiso has a much smaller vocabulary than the everyday Dogon language and is used mainly during chants and ritual teachings. Elders say this special speech was first taught by the spirits at the beginning of time. It serves as a sacred way to pass down the story of creation and the earliest ancestors. This world of daily farming, carved doors, grain stores, shrines, masks, and rare long-cycle ceremonies was what outside researchers first encountered when they arrived in Dogon country and began to listen closely. One of the most important of these early visitors was a French researcher named Marcel Griaule. He worked in a new field at the time that focused on understanding how different groups of people live and think. In the early 1930s, he led a long expedition known as the Dakar-Djibouti mission. His team traveled from the western coast of Africa to the eastern shore of the Red Sea. Along the way, they collected more than 3,000 objects for a museum in Paris and made wide use of film cameras, audio equipment, and photography to record what they saw. During and after this mission, Griaule became deeply interested in Dogon country. From 1931 until he died in the mid-1950s, he returned many times. Sometimes he stayed for weeks, sometimes for months. He learned the local speech, observed ceremonies, and built long-term relationships with the same families, especially in the villages around Sangha. His notes show that he asked the same questions again and again over the years to the same elders. He compared their answers to look for details that stayed consistent over time. Many of these talks took place under a special meeting shelter called a tuguna. A tuguna has a low roof supported by heavy wooden posts and layers of millet stalks. It is built so low that adults cannot stand up straight inside. This simple design forces people to stay calm during discussions, because no one can suddenly jump to their feet or swing a weapon without hitting the roof. It was in a setting like this that one of the most famous conversations in African studies took place. In the late 1940s, Griaule spent 33 days talking with just one Dogon elder, a man named Ogotemeli. He was a respected Hogan and a skilled diviner. Years earlier, he had lost his sight when a hunting gun exploded near his face, but his blindness did not reduce his standing. People from many villages sought him out for advice and insight. Day after day, Griaule sat with Ogotemeli in the shade, often inside a tuguna. As the elder explained the full structure of the Dogon world, Ogotemeli used whatever lay around him to teach. He drew shapes in the sand. He pointed to carvings on doors and posts. He referred to masks, granaries, and the arrangement of the village. In his explanations, nothing in Dogon life was random. Numbers, animals, human bodies, tools, houses, and the land all fit into a single ordered system that began with Amma's first act of creation and continued through the work of spirits and ancestors. Griaule shaped these 33 days into a book first published in French in 1948. It was later translated into English with the title Conversations with Ogotemeli. The book reads almost like a daily journal. Each day introduces another piece of the system: how the world was formed, how the first people appeared, how language came into being, why masks look the way they do, and how all these pieces connect the land to the sky. But this book was only part of what Griaule and his co-workers gathered. In the background, they were also recording more technical teachings from a small group of priests and elders. In 1950, Griaule and a close colleague published a detailed article about what they said they had learned from Dogon priests concerning a bright star and a companion star that is not visible to the naked eye. They described cycles, drawings, and sacred objects linked to that part of the sky. To readers far from Dogon country, it sounded like a hidden star system, complete with diagrams that looked like a kind of map built into ritual life. This was the moment when the idea of a Dogon star map first reached the outside world. Many years later, those same notes, drawings, and recordings would be fed into AI systems as raw data. By lining them up and comparing them with real star measurements, AI helped show which parts of the Dogon star map matched the sky and which parts clearly did not. Inside the Dogon star map. Dogon teaching gives special importance to the brightest star in the night sky. In their speech, it is called Sigu or Sigu, the Sigu star. It is tied to the rare, long Sigu ceremony. In some village explanations, Sigu acts as the anchor point in the sky, the light that helps mark out a much larger and more complex system that unfolds around it. From that starting point, Dogon priests do not treat this bright star as the real center. In the records of Marcel Griaule and Germain Dieterlen, elders say that Sigu is only one focus along the path of a far more important partner, a star they call Po Tolo, the Digitaria star. In their language, Tolo means star, and Po is the tiny grain used to make a small cereal, so Po Tolo becomes the star of the smallest grain. In these teachings, Po Tolo is described as incredibly small, yet unbelievably heavy. Dogon priests tie it directly to the tiny first grain Amma used to begin the world. In one summary of the old field notes, they even call Po Tolo the egg of the world, the place where beginnings and endings are held together. It is described as extremely dense and constantly turning around on itself as it circles the brighter star. Elders say this spinning motion is one reason it carries such a strong creative force. Its path is not drawn as a simple circle. Elders draw an oval in the sand, placing Sigu at one focus of the shape and Po Tolo moving along the stretched curve. They explain that Po Tolo takes about 50 years to finish one full path around the bright star. Some versions say they count this 50-year cycle 2 times in a row. They link it to their idea that things often come in pairs, a first time and a second time. So together it becomes a full 100-year pattern, but the story does not stop at one hidden partner. In the same old notes, Dogon priests also speak of another star, called Emiya Tolo. Some elders describe it as the sorghum star, or female sorghum star. Emiya Tolo is said to be larger than the tiny Digitaria star, but lighter in weight. It sits farther out and moves on a wider path around the bright main star. Some versions say that Emiya Tolo gives off strong rays, the same way the sun seems to spill out lines of light. In several accounts, there is also mention of a smaller star of women, called Neon Tolo, that moves with Emiya Tolo. It is tied to female strength and fertility. When these pieces are put together, the whole system becomes something like a family. For the Dogon, the sky is not a separate place. It mirrors the land, the farms, and the bodies of the people who live beneath it. Beyond this small star group, the same elders speak of other parts of the sky in ways that match the rest of their teaching. They say the Earth and the other planets turn on themselves and move around the sun. They describe Jupiter as having 4 main companions, a clear match to its 4 largest moons. They speak of Saturn, with a flat band or ring around it. The wide strip of light we call the Milky Way also has its place. In Dogon stories, it becomes a giant path or river stretching across the sky, and in some tellings, it is tied to the idea of a great placenta or sky body that once fed the first beings. The long, pale band becomes more than a cluster of distant stars. It becomes a road that souls and spirits can travel, a sign of direction, and a reminder that the world is bigger than what people can see on the ground. Time is also measured through sky markers. Several accounts based on Dogon teaching explain that they use more than one calendar at the same time. One that follows the sun through the year, one that follows the moon, one that watches the bright Sirius system, and one that tracks Venus. With several different sky cycles running at once, farmers, priests, and mask leaders can choose the right times for planting, for ceremonies, and for the major rites tied to ancestors. Knowledge of this system is not spread evenly among the people. Common villagers know the simple stories, the visible patterns, and the names of the bright stars. The deeper teachings are held by a smaller group of initiated specialists, priests, diviners, and chosen members of the mask societies. They pass this knowledge from one generation to the next through spoken lessons, drawings in the sand, symbols carved into doors, old songs, and a secret ritual speech used only in the biggest rites. Masks and carved objects become 3-dimensional diagrams inside this system. One example is the tall Siraj mask, a long plank with a small face at the bottom and a high straight blade rising above. Some Dogon explanations say that the ladder-like steps carved into the mask stand for the layers of the universe and the paths between earth and sky. When a dancer moves the cirrage mask and tips it toward the ground in 4 directions, it is said to echo the 4 corners of the world, and the movement first given to the universe by other masks, such as the Kanaga, carry a double cross shape with one bar seen as sky and the other as earth. When dancers leap and strike the ground while wearing these masks, they act out the link between above and below on its own. The sky map makes perfect sense in their world. The trouble begins when people from far away try to compare it to scientific maps and look for exact matches. Dogon star map versus modern astronomy. Before anything else, it helps to picture what the real Sirius system actually is. Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky and sits inside a group of stars known as the Big Dog. That is why people have long called it the Dog Star. It is a little under 9 light-years away from Earth, which is close by space standards. 1 light-year is the distance that light travels in 1 year, roughly 6 trillion miles. That means Sirius is about 9 of those huge steps away from us. Even though that sounds impossibly far, it places the system within our local neighborhood in the galaxy. When astronomers studied Sirius more closely, they learned that it is not one star, but a pair of stars circling around each other. The bright one that people see from Earth is called Sirius A. It is about twice as heavy as the Sun and roughly 25 times brighter. Its partner is Sirius B. Sirius B is a white dwarf, meaning it is the leftover core of a star that once looked a lot like the Sun. Most of its mass has been squeezed into a body smaller than Earth, only about 7,500 miles wide. This extreme squeezing is why it is incredibly dense and hot. Even so, it shines much more faintly than Sirius A, because the small size leaves very little surface area for light to escape. The 2 stars move around a shared center along a stretched-out path rather than a perfect circle. On average, they are about 20 times farther apart than the distance from Earth to the Sun. But that distance shifts a great deal during the orbit. At their closest, they are only about 8 times the Earth-Sun distance from one another. At their farthest point, they are about 30 to a little over 30 times that distance. One complete loop takes just over 50 years. It took astronomers a long time to work all of this out. In the 1840s, a German astronomer named Friedrich Bessel measured the position of Sirius with great care and saw that it did not move in a smooth line. It had a tiny wobble, as if something unseen were pulling on it. In 1844, Bessel announced that there had to be an invisible partner star whose gravity tugged Sirius back and forth. Based on the wobble alone, he estimated that the stars circled each other in about 50 years. At that time, nobody had actually seen the companion star. The first direct sighting came in 1862. Alvin Graham Clark, an American telescope maker testing a new large lens, pointed it at Sirius and saw a tiny faint spot of light close to the bright star. That faint dot was the predicted companion that Bessel had described almost 20 years earlier. With better telescopes and steady observations, astronomers began charting its path. Soon, they realized that the small star was far too dense to be a normal star. In the early 1900s, as the idea of white dwarfs took shape in astronomy, Sirius B became one of the best examples. A star that had burned through its fuel and collapsed into a tiny, ultra-dense core. Now set that picture beside what Dogon elders reportedly told the French researchers Marcel Griaule and Germain Dieterlen in the middle of the 20th century. The core idea of Potolo, a very small, very heavy, invisible star moving around Sirius in an oval path that takes about 50 years, lines up well with the real white dwarf Sirius B and its measured orbit of just over 50 years. The idea that this companion is made of unusually dense matter also fits the general nature of a white dwarf, where so much mass is packed into so little space that normal matter would collapse. The picture breaks, however, when you compare the other star, Emi-Yatolo, with modern data. Astronomers have spent years searching for any third star in the Sirius system using extremely sensitive instruments. High-contrast imaging with large telescopes, such as the Very Large Telescope's advanced system, has ruled out any additional star bright or massive enough to match the description of the Sorghum star. Careful tracking of the orbits of Sirius A and Sirius B leaves very little room for a third stellar object. The weight and balance of the system do not show any sign of one based on everything measured so far. The real Sirius system appears to be a 2-star system with no sign of Emi-Yatolo at all. There are also problems inside the Dogon material itself. In the late 1970s, an astronomer named Ian Ridpath pointed out that when you read the Sirius stories word for word, they do not fit together neatly. Some parts sound close to real astronomy, but many others are vague, symbolic, or simply incorrect. Ridpath argued that the small group of details that seem too accurate most likely came from European astronomy, not from an untouched, ancient source. In his view, bits of information about Jupiter's moons, Saturn's ring, and the strange companion of Sirius could have reached the Dogon through visitors and then been folded into their own symbolic system. Carl Sagan made a similar point. He said that if someone truly gave the Dogon secret knowledge about space, it would be strange that their facts match what European astronomers believed in the 1920s, but leave out things those same astronomers already knew, like the outer planets Uranus and Neptune, or the finer details of the solar system. Sagan believed a simpler explanation made more sense. Dogon elders likely heard scattered pieces of astronomy from outsiders and shaped those pieces into their own teachings. A journalist named James Oberg took this idea even further. He compared the Dogon accounts with popular science articles from Europe in the 1920s and 1930s. He found that the mysterious Dogon details matched those old articles almost exactly. Oberg also pointed out that the Dogon were never completely cut off. Traders, soldiers, missionaries, and colonial officials all moved through the region. In his view, it would take only one visitor mentioning the strange wobble of Sirius for the idea to settle into the minds of a few Dogon teachers. Thanks for watching. Now check out the videos popping up on screen for more unbelievable stories.